description. We have a truly serious journalist, an investigative journalist of decades. His name is Bill Gertz. He's writing now for, among other places, the Free Beacon. Bill, how are you, sir?
Hi, Mark. Great to be on the show.
It's a pleasure. Now, you wrote a piece that drew my attention, China covertly subverting Trump re-election. I haven't heard any committee hearings on this. I haven't heard any concern about the big lib media about this. Tell the American people what's taking place here.
Yeah, this is an important story. We've seen almost near hysteria from the media on Russian election meddling for the past 2.5 years, but the real threat is from China. I interviewed a dissident billionaire, Guo Wengui, in New York. He used to be close to the leaders there, and he has new information that I disclosed on how this four-pronged campaign by China to unseat Trump in the 2020 re-election bid. And basically those four elements include Wall Street bankers like Hank Paulson to lobby in favor of the Democrats and against Trump. Also other politicians, former officials and so forth, lobbyists in Washington are being mobilized as part of this campaign. And the U.S. news media, which according to Guo is controlled. And I said, you mean influence? And he said, no. He believes that the media is controlled through various means, whether it's investments in China, whether it's protecting bureaus or fear of having reporters kicked out of China that are actually doing the bidding against Trump. Of course, they don't need much spurring to get the anti-Trump narrative that they've been spewing for so long. And then last is Asian Americans. He said that the Chinese are going to mobilize Asian Americans to try to defeat Donald Trump in the 2020 election.
Now, since you've reported this in a very public place called the Washington Free Beacon, where many, many people go, have you been contacted by members of Congress? Do they want your information? Do they want any hearings? Are they concerned about Chinese interference in our election?
I have not heard anything, although I just got back from Omaha, where I was at the U.S. Strategic Command Deterrence Conference. But I will be doing some follow-up, and I will seek some congressional reaction. Hopefully, Congress will do its oversight job and really focus on the need to counter Chinese election influence in the coming election cycle.
But let's be clear about this. They want Trump to lose.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, Trump made the first point in September at the UN about the Chinese election meddling, and then Vice President Pence in October gave a detailed speech in which he said the bottom line is the Chinese want a different president than Trump. They're basically trying to wait him out. I think the recent trade negotiations are an indication there that they're just playing games with our negotiators over there.
And militarily, China is a dire threat, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like I said, I was at Stratcom. The deputy commander, Admiral Creedy, 3-star, said that they're doing a aggressive buildup of nuclear forces, and it's couched in secrecy. And they claim to have a no first use policy. And Admiral Creedy, when I asked him about it, he says, "I don't know what this no first use policy. I've read it. Chinese have not enunciated anything about it." So it was a pretty tough briefing for reporters that he detailed this. And then another J2, the intelligence director for Stratcom, described the nuclear buildup by China as basically breathtaking in its scope. And of course, they've got like 3,000 miles of underground tunnels where they're keeping their warheads and producing them. And the U.S. intelligence community doesn't even know how many warheads they have. They think it's around 200. It could be as many as 1,500.
You know, Bill Gertz, I talked to a lot of experts on China, military and otherwise. They tell me if it came to a face-off with China now, it's not clear that we could win because of their advances in anti-satellite technology that would knock out our GPS systems and other advances. And we lag behind as a result of the Obama administration. We're trying to catch up at that. They have really a significant armed forces. Is that correct?
Yes, they do. It is the major threat. Well, Russia is a threat as well. Clearly, the China threat, to me, is the most serious threat facing the country. And the problem is that we have all of this economic integration with China, and as a result of that, it's being used as leverage to prevent the United States and the government from dealing with this threat. That's the biggest problem. You have factions within the government that are saying, oh, no, we just have to trade with China, and that will produce a benign China in the future. It's been a total failure for the last 35 years.
You write here that China has reclaimed some 3,200 acres of islands, and last year was detected deploying anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles on them, along with electronic warfare capabilities. They are making themselves... they are a presence in virtually every corner of the earth, aren't they, at this point?
Yes, and they're expanding. Their goal, and again, the intelligence community for the last 25 years has been saying, "Oh, China's not really a threat." I had a DIA director tell me to my face 20 years ago that China's not a threat, and I asked him why, and he said because of their statements, and I was astounded that he had been disinformed by Chinese propaganda for so many years. So that's kind of been my quest now to try and highlight this China threat, but it is an existential threat. In fact, the nominee for the vice chairman, General John Hyten, testified this week, and I did a Washington Times column on it today. And basically, he said that we have major shortfalls of weapons and munitions that we need. So that if the balloon ever went up and there was a conflict, say if the Chinese tried to ram one of our ships in the South China Sea doing a freedom of navigation operations, that we don't have enough equipment. We have logistics shortfalls. We have undersea warfare shortfalls. So there's a major push right now to try and build up American forces in Asia so that we won't have to go to war with China. We can deter them with peace through strength.
And yet if this president loses, and one of the people I saw on the stage yesterday and the day before becomes president of the United States, they will put a strong foot on the brake of our rebuilding our military, won't they?
Absolutely. I mean, it's you can see that in the Democrats that are running the House Armed Services Committee. They've already tried to cut the small nuclear warhead that the Pentagon says it needs to deter both Russia and China. And so it's going to be a huge problem if the Democrats retake the administration.
You know, Bill Gertz, you and I have been around long enough, even during the Reagan administration, when he was pushing the Strategic Defense Initiative, and they mocked him, called it Star Wars. They made it very, very difficult for him to fund it over the years. And yet it's exactly the kind of system now that we, parts of Europe, the Israelis and others, rely on to protect us from these intercontinental ballistic missiles and short-range missiles.
Yes, and for many, many years, our missile defenses were deliberately constrained so as to not be used if there was an attack from China or Russia, and I think that's changing. Clearly, the Trump administration has stopped saying that we're not going to defend our country against Russian or Chinese long-range missiles. So they're looking at new ways of doing that. They're looking at asymmetric means, perhaps space-based interceptors. They're talking about something called left of launch, which would be like cyber attacks on missile control facilities so that when they press the button for launch, instead of launching, it'll blow up on the launch pad. So those are the kinds of things that are being looked at.
And our advantage used to be technological with these other countries, but now China has stolen its way into not parity yet, but working on it.
Yeah, right now the big race is in two specific areas. One is artificial intelligence, and the other is quantum computing and communications. Those are two big areas. The U.S. is pushing very hard to do that. Another area that the Chinese are ahead of us is in hypersonic missiles.
Yep. And what are those? Tell the people.
Yeah, hypersonic missile is a missile that goes about 7,000 miles per hour or faster. But the unique feature of it is it's capable of maneuvering, and therefore it can defeat any missile defense system. The Chinese are close to deploying their first hypersonic glide vehicle. I know the Pentagon's engaged in a crash program to try and match that. And the Russians too are also developing a hypersonic.
We're behind a lot now, aren't we? We're trying to play catch up. They steal our technology. They use our technology to advance their technology. It's really one administration, one 8-year administration can do something like this. Right, Bill Gertz?
Extreme damage from the Obama administration. Basically, under Obama, the U.S. government was told in White House directives, no government agency shall say anything critical of China. So therefore, for 8 years, we watched as the Chinese tried to take over the South China Sea. We saw them move into the East China Sea. We saw them moving into the Horn of Africa and expanding their capabilities and stealing our technology. The White House estimates that as much as $600 billion annually in American technology has been stolen by China. I mean, no nation can survive with that level of technology theft.
Am I right that the Chinese also control both ends of the Panama Canal through contracts?
Yes, there are two commercial shipping companies. Hutchison Whampoa is a Hong Kong company, but the owner is very close to Beijing communist leaders. They are setting up networks of these type of commercial port facilities. But in China, they have something that Chinese President Xi Jinping has announced. It's called civil-military fusion. Therefore, everything in China that's military will be used for civilians, and everything that's civilian will be used for the military. So all of its outposts around the world, and they're doing more of them through this Belt and Road Initiative, a multi-trillion-dollar third world investment program, and they're setting up commercial entities that will serve as military bases.
It is hard to see how our country, with at least one party that undermines our military and undermines this president who's really trying to confront China, how we don't fall behind. And we talk about the spirit of the American people. That's true. But our government, in many respects, is dysfunctional. Well,
actually, the good news is there is some bipartisan consensus emerging on the China threat. Some Democrats in Congress are actually beginning to say, "Hey, wait a minute, we can't look the other way on."
Are any of them running for president?
I doubt it very much. Although we saw Biden, he basically dismissed the notion that the U.S. Could even try to compete with China, and then he took a whole bunch of flack for it, and then backed down and tried to say, "Oh yes, we've got to stop China from stealing our technology."
Yeah, right. Well, he was vice president for 8 years, and they didn't do a damn thing. Well, Bill, you're terrific. You're a national resource, and when your new book comes out, you'll let me know.
Yes.
And we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
All right. God bless.